Leviathan is one of the 7 deadly sins, a group of demons from real-life writings that are said to rule over hell, and with us finally seeing Leviathan on screen in the Helluverse, I think now is a good time to talk about everything we know about her, both in the show and outside of it. Leviathan is the deadly sin of envy in the Helluverse, inspired by the real-life writings of Peter Binsfield from the 16th century. Leviathan is an entity we know of from the Bible, whose different mentions add up to some very interesting lore. Leviathan is, first and foremost, understood to be a massive sea monster, one who has existed since ancient times. In the Book of Psalms, God himself is described as having slain Leviathan in the earliest of times, with tradition saying that Leviathan was so massive that God had to slay its partner so it would not reproduce and devour all of humanity. Here in the text, Leviathan is described as having multiple heads crushed, perhaps inspiring the depiction of Leviathan in the show as a two-headed being. The name Leviathan comes from the root word lava, which I believe to mean something like to coil, inspiring the general depiction of Leviathan as not just a massive sea beast, but as one that is long and serpent-like. In the Helluverse, Leviathan rules over the Ring of Envy, which is believed to be a ring that is entirely aquatic, basically one giant ocean, with little dry land mass, if any. This is the only ring we haven't explicitly seen in the show, though my editor Haro pointed out that the theater room in Blitz's head from the episode Ghost Effers could be the Envy ring itself, as outside of the windows all we see is pitch black, but in the theater room itself we even see what looks like some coral growing between the seats, implying they are in an ocean despite Blitz not looking like he in particular is underwater. Every ring of hell has a different colored sky, with the color diagrams in both Helluverse shows indicating that Envy's sky is purple, the darkest color even in the day. This would mean that even near the surface of the water in the Envy ring, there'd be very little light, leading to the demons there evolving the traits of deep-sea aquatic life. This includes bioluminescence, with many deep-sea demons in the show being able to glow in the dark, which seems to include Leviathan herself, others like Glitz and Glam, and even Rolando. However, the deep-sea fish demons can also become non-corporeal, basically turning into ghosts. I believe this evolved out of the need to navigate past large underwater masses of earth or stone that would be difficult to swim around in the endless dark. The culture of the Envy Ring is believed to be very suburban, and if it's really underwater, it is probably hard or even impossible for other demons to live there, explaining why we still haven't seen it in the show. The only location we know exists there, as far as I am aware, is a city called Leviathan, or perhaps it's pronounced Levitown, as Levy is the way that Mammon pronounces Leviathan as a nickname. This town was listed as one of the stops on the Verosika band t-shirt that used to be sold at the Shark Robot merchandise store. This is likely the capital of the Envy Ring, and if not, I still imagine it's very important and perhaps where Leviathan herself lives. This sort of underwater isolation seems to have emboldened the deep-sea demons to a type of species racism in hell that goes far beyond what the other demons already display. They seem to look down on imps in particular, with Blitz meeting a deep-sea Karen and her child who refer to Blitz as a fire toad, something imps seem to find offensive. Rolando also referred to Millie as a filthy Rathian, showing a disdain for the ring that imps seem to come from in particular. And the idea here is that the deep-sea demons are trying to make themselves the envy of the other rings, but they are also probably very envious of the other rings as well. Their community may seem very nice on the surface, but there may be nothing of note to do there, with the Envians preferring to travel to Even Wrath to get away from their home. The Envy theme is also believed to inspire the power of the deep-sea demons to possess others, something that in World probably evolved out of their ability to turn ghostly. Today, this is used largely to possess humans on Earth, but it can be used to control other demons as we see Rolando do with Blitz, and especially deep in Hell's Pass, I like to imagine that they would travel to other rings and take over the bodies of other people for long periods of time in order to live the lives they wanted. The deep-sea demons, sometimes referred to as infestors or possessors, also seem to eat the emotional energy of others, feasting on the emotional struggles of people like Blitz. And they would be able to feast on their emotional energy more easily by living among them, taking over the body of someone they know and then slowly sabotaging their life. Each deadly sin is also shown to have an app themed after them on Blitz's Hellphone, where Leviathan has an app called NV, spelled E-N-V-E-E, which is very important here. This app is believed to be very similar to TikTok, with a similar enough icon design, but either way is meant to be understood as general social media. TikTok was known early on for suppressing the content of different economic lifestyles in favor of showing content for the upper middle class suburbs, showing off a culture that is isolated but lives rather comfortably, similar to what we imagined so far for the Envy Ring. The fractured face on the icon was believed to be a reference to how social media can fracture the psyche, and while this still plays into the thematic ideas of envy, it is also a reference to Leviathan being a two-headed entity in the show. It makes sense then that this app would be two-faced, as envy is the most two-faced of the deadly sins. When you are envious, it means you want something that someone else has, and that causes you to dislike or resent them. Whereas the other part of envy is wanting to take what they have for yourself, for which you often have to put on an act of pretending you like the person, until you can either steal it, or some people keep up the act for their entire lives, needing the other person to like them in order to get access to their benefits. Leviathan displays this two-faced nature in the show, where her light face seems interested in Mammon, and at least always puts on a smile, perhaps envying his wealth and being willing to be close to him because of that. Her other face, however, is angry, seeming to hate the general situation that they are in, and being the one that keeps the other face in control, or rather holding her back. If the Envy Ring is isolated because it is largely underwater, it would make sense to have an app where people can get an inside look to the one ring that they can't visit as easily as all the others. Before social media, I believe the Envy Ring would have tried to maintain this sense of celebrity with magazines and social gossip columns. But all of that would change when Velvet came to Hell. Velvet is the overlord of social media, an earthborn sinner who died in the mid-2010s and who brought the social media age with her into Hell. For a while, I was surprised that envy, a deadly sin, would have such a strong social media association as well. But as someone recently pointed out to us in our comments, the Envy app name is NV, spelled E-N-V-E-E. This is how we refer to the three V's, Vox, Valentino, and of course, the third V, Velvet, indicating that Velvet actually collaborated with Leviathan on this app. Perhaps early on, the Envy Ring relied entirely on gossip columns and the like, which we see are still popular in Hell with how they comment on Ozzy and Stolas and their scandalous affairs. But when Velvet's social media began to turn more people away from the pages, Leviathan could reach out to Velvet and the V's directly to create an app that could help her keep her own ring in the spotlight. Now, Leviathan is a fun figure in esoterica and mythology because he hints at something a bit more primordial. In ancient mythology, different gods represented different tribes of people, with each myth being about its own local culture being represented by their own god. These ancient mythologies also often have stories of younger gods overthrowing an earlier generation of gods, particularly gods of the ocean. This is the case with Babylonian mythology, where Enki is described as first defeating the god of freshwater, Apsu. Enki's son Marduk goes on to defeat the god of salt water, Tiamat, who creates monsters of the sea to attack the other gods as revenge for killing Apsu. Judaism is a monotheization of these myths, where gods are reduced to less divine symbols to reserve worship for a one true god, while still preserving the real-life history that these ancient mythologies share. Leviathan is thus a symbol we might say represents an ancient massive culture that had gained control of the known world. A being that itself was chaotic and ancient, from a culture that hadn't developed what we think of as proper moral society, even by earlier culture standards. Leviathan, as a more demonic idea, would begin to symbolize even more ancient times before humans existed at all. Times where horrible monsters beyond what we can comprehend once existed, evolving into what we'd call Lovecraftian themes today. H.P. Lovecraft was a famous writer from the early 1900s who popularized this genre of cosmic horror, which involved ancient, incomprehensible powers and entities that were a darkness beyond what humans were ever meant to coexist with, often with a deep sea or tentacle theme, or even just serpentine and coiling imagery. I believe Vivzipop said in early live streams that the spiritual world of the Helluverse would be influenced not just by Judeo-Christian traditions, but many mythologies around the world, and even modern mindsets like the ideas of Lovecraft. We saw this as far back as the Has-Been Hotel pilot, where in the background of the hotel we can see photos of the Von Eldridge family, who were said to have Lovecraftian inspiration. The son in this family was named Sophiathan von Eldridge, a play on Leviathan, with many fans expecting some connection to Leviathan with her eventual reveal, but that doesn't seem to be the case. As of now, the family seems to be unrelated to the Envy Ring entirely, and they seem to have more of a general Lovecraft theme instead of a deep sea theme, but it gives some indications that Vivzy may think of Leviathan and the Envy Ring as something a bit more primordial. Stolas himself hints at the Lovecraftian lore in the episode where he was supposed to take Octavia to see the meteor shower that he calls Azathoth's Tears, with Azathoth being a primordial god of chaos and non-existence, you could say, in Lovecraftian lore. These tears representing entities of chaos that never got to exist. For me, these little details always made me want to believe that in the Helluverse, Leviathan is from a cosmic race that predates most of Hell as we understand it, or even existence as we understand it, with stronger powers rising up in Hell after her, but with Leviathan knowing that all she has to do is wait out their inevitable fall and she can continue ruling. But for more information, consider subscribing, as we undoubtedly have more demonic lore coming very soon. And if you really like lore, consider becoming a member of our channel. Members get early access to my more extensive and larger scale deep dive essays, with the one I'm working on now being the real life story of Lucifer in its different forms in the Bible. Sign up to get early access to the parts we have done and help support us making more and more. Our last video we did for the Early Access Membership Club was our Has-Been Hotel Conspiracy Iceberg video, which is over an hour long. Go check it out if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.